Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic co-host right here,
Eddie Nicholas. What a beautiful people. Welcome to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. Boom, 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 boom. We are so glad that you decided to tune in and join us today. So, Adam, what's going on?
Oh my gosh. I hope you brought your passport because we're about to visit 3 different countries on this episode.
Oh, wow.
Well, buckle up. Let's do it. Well, first, let us take a moment to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. So tonight, this episode, we're talking about 3 different countries and what's happening in the music business. First, I think we should go north. We're in the States, so let's go up north to Canada and talk about what's happening there. What happened in Canada for the longest time is that they were sort of the last holdout of big chain retail outfits. Just recently, unfortunately, HMV in Canada has announced that they are closing their doors. So let's go back a little bit. HMV is actually a UK-based company, and they over time started to expand, and then they got into the Canadian market and actually did a bunch of things that I think HMV Canada should be proud of. Namely, they, through time, end up, like I said, having 102 stores throughout all of the provinces. They also, even up to last year, they were trying to add stores. So this wasn't a company that was necessarily knowing that they were in the middle of trying to go bankrupt or out of business. So what happened in Canada is that over time, with all of the other stores starting to close around the globe, Canada became like a main player. In particular, there's 2 avenues that Canada started to enjoy benefits from. One was Blu-rays. You know, I don't know if you ever watch any. I've never seen anything on a Blu-ray. Have you? It's like a DVD but fancy or something.
It looks like a big old record.
Is that like a Laserdisc from back in the day or something, but a smaller version or something? Anyway, so HMV Canada really enjoyed lots of profits around Blu-rays and vinyl, coincidentally enough. They had a lot of activity in terms of sales with those 2 sectors, if you will. Anyway, they were trying to stay afloat while all of these other companies, and there are a lot of them, you know, Tower Records. What was you had like a favorite chain back in the day that you were into?
Go to Crazy Eddie's.
Yes. Okay. So you got music there. I got music there. The Wiz, I remember a bunch of them.
The Wiz.
Yeah. So my biggest one was Tower Records by Astor Place in New York City, and then
Virgin there.
Yep. Virgin Megastore. I was definitely a big shopper of those stores. But anyway, HMV's kind of been that last holdout. While all of these companies have been closed their doors, HMV was still around. And I think that they ought to be proud of the fact that they were able to adapt to what was happening. Say they knew what was going down, meaning that young people were not following these kinds of stores like they used to. So what they did was they said, well, let's get into fashion. And they developed a whole merchandise line, if you will, or opportunity for young people to come into the store to buy things other than music, because they knew that music represented the tiniest portion or whatever. What ended up happening, unfortunately, is that after trying all these bits, certain things worked, certain things didn't. Their costs were higher than the income. So down they're closing their doors, but the statement does say that they're not, HMV as a whole is not shutting its doors, just this Canadian outfit. But it spells trouble, because when we're talking about how more people are consuming music more than ever before, it's not through these mediums anymore. And it becomes really important when you're an artist and you're thinking about, shoot, should I do a CD? Should I do some sort of tangible product? You got to figure out more direct sales, direct to fan sales. That's your call to action now, because even the HMVs of the world are really starting to close their doors, or they're pivoting completely away from a lot of this music. I don't know if you ever had an opportunity that you had your stuff in record stores before. Have you ever seen your stuff on the shelf? In any way, you know?
Actually, I have seen singles, like vinyl.
Oh,
I saw vinyl, and I did see it here in the States, and I did happen to see it in Amsterdam.
Oh, that's
so,
great.
You know, it was a blessing to see, you know, it put in that medium. But other than that, as you said, everything else is you get it online, or
that's right.
It's already shared on a cassette or on a CD or something like that. So.
They are saying that there's some interesting things about this that kind of helps independent artists. for a while, like I said, these chains started to close their doors while HMV still was around. But now you still had sort of this vacuum that's left. And some are wondering whether you're going to have more independent record stores come up, like independent stores that are still around, or like Amoeba, another one in New York called Rough Trade. There actually are a few locations around the globe. Anyway, I think the point here is that when you start to see news of HMVs of the world and other places starting to close their doors, there's a call to action if you're an artist. And that means I have to pivot. If I can't get into these stores, the Best Buys, the Targets of the world, what else can I do?
Or the question is how do you get into them? That's
Right.
the question. How do I get into it?
Well, I think a simple answer to a really complex problem is that it's hard for these outfits to have sections for music as it is. So when they are considering what music to add in a section, by and large, it's going to be your biggest earners, your Beyoncé's, Britney Spears of the world. And so,
Or you better recategorize your music and call it world beat or world music.
well, it's a very good point, actually. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to take another trip from Canada to the UK and talk about what's happening there, and then we'll end our journey in China. Keep it locked right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, the heartbeat of Sudan.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM, Freedom Radio Hour. My name is Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here joined by my fantastic co-host, the one and only
Mr. Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about the unfortunate demise of over 102 HMV Canada stores that have plagued the provinces out there.
Now, you know what? Now it's catching on me, because when you said HMV, I'm like, aren't they the clothing store?
No. Did you ever shop at HMV? I've shopped many times at HMV.
I don't think so.
No, you don't think so? I'll tell you one thing. I'm very fascinated by how things have changed, because there was a time when I used to shop at like a Sam Goody, and they used to have a kiosk where you could go up, press a couple of tunes. I think you used to pay for like 2 songs. You pay for it, and then they tell you come back. And you come back, there'd be a printout with a cassette tape with the information on it, and they would spit it out. It was like a little like vending machine, if you will, for music. So
Wow.
at the time, I'm like, oh, this is going to be the future of music, that, you know, it'll transform from cassette tape to CD and so on, but it didn't. I think it just didn't work out. Probably because the physical goods and the cost factor didn't work out. But anyhow, HMV really tried to be adaptable in an ever-changing climate.
Okay.
That brings us to what's happening in the UK. You see, the UK too has this amazing population of people and young people that are really still passionate about the music. What does that mean? Where countries like Canada, US, for example, is really first to say streaming is the wave of the future. A lot of the stores we've shut down. We're just not into the tangible goods like that. Whereas other countries took a long time to arrive at that. Case in point is Canada, and now in the UK. UK had for a long time, they still do. They have a building, slowly but surely, a reemergence of the vinyl business that's out there.
Well, the UK has always been into vinyl.
Right. And
Always.
And it's also like there's a bit of a derivative of that, which is like they just have a stronger affinity towards knowing the details of music, you know? They're not sort of that casual listener that we come more across here in the States, for
The
example.
history, who wrote it, what date it was written, who were the artists sitting up in the studio banging out the keyboard.
Yes.
Because of many of them, as we find, you know, with the Beatles, they always identified with a lot of our rock and roll and R&B legends, you know, to do what they did to become phenomenal artists. So, but they did the history.
Yes.
They learned the history of the music.
So what's happened now in the UK is that while in the US we've known that for the longest time the artist album has been dwindling in terms of sales in favor of the streaming. So that means that folks here want to listen to a lot of songs, but they're not listening to a full album at all. Well, the UK has really have to come to grips now with the brutal truth that they too have experienced that same problem. This last year, they've noticed that they 9.5 out of the 10 singles that were released, the biggest records last year, were non-UK artists. Let me say that again. The reason why I say 9.5 instead of a person is like a whole person, because one of the songs was co-written by an American person. So in that case, we're talking Calvin Harris and Rihanna had a big record last year. But Calvin Harris is British and Rihanna's Jamaican, but American.
And tally ho to cupcakes and tea.
But the problem is...
Wait a minute.
All right.
Did Miss Adele, Miss UK herself?
It's good.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to bring her up because while Adele's 25 album and Coldplay's album were the biggest artist album of 2016, their albums actually didn't come out till 2015. So, in other words, the sales, while they enjoyed a lot of sales in the UK, Adele and Coldplay, they're not counted because they didn't release. There's no artist albums of UK artists that released in 2016. They're saying the big 4 albums in the UK, not only are they not UK artists, they're not even albums. They're compilations. It's the Now series. You remember Now? It takes up.
We pick a song from here. We pick a song from here. This is what's hot now. This is what this DJ so and so from Rocksteady 102,000. Blah 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 blah.
It. And I'll tell you what. The quick story about that.
My favorite songs.
Yes. But what ended up happening was Richard Branson, who's behind Virgin, he's a big-time person who really created the Now series. They, just like you said, would take the hottest records of the radio and put them to license them all, put them out on a compilation. Boom. They've done it. They've done so well that they're now on their 95th Now compilation release. So in the UK, that represents the top 3 best-selling albums of 2016. Now 93, 94, and volume 95. So now we're breaking down the artist album. I told you Adele and Coldplay were considered the biggest artist albums of 2016, but their product came out at the end of 2015. So now this leaves a big problem for a few reasons for the UK. One is, how do we make the charts more British? If you're British, how do you make the charts more British? So what they try to do is a study to figure out how to get that accomplished. The basic of this is that they realize that the average age of the top selling artist on the chart right now is 44 years old. That's a problem if you're trying to get younger artists to be on the top of the UK pop charts. The other big issue they're having is that they're considering whether they should cancel completely out of the UK singles charts, because if you look at the UK singles chart today, it's all Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce.
But those artists are considered world artists.
But they're not British.
And?
Well, if you're in the UK and you work for UK companies, you're about trying to up the money for UK artists. You feel me?
And they're doing their every bit to find out how to tag their brand onto Rihanna, Drake, and all those other artists. These artists are world artists. You know, the boundaries as far as music have been broken and torn down into shreds.
And even like the traditional models that we learn to rely on, throw them all out the window.
And again, getting back to Adele. Miss Adele, where's she from, UK?
Yes.
She came over here winning all types of American Music Awards and Grammys and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't want to hear it. How do we blah, blah, blah. Music is world music. We have to allow ourselves to be more open and more accommodating to a lot of it, because as we all know, a lot of it is a MESS. But it speaks to someone. It speaks to volumes because it's selling millions.
Right, it is. And I think any country's going to have this issue, whether you're in Norway, UK, or what have you, whether there should be some sort of balance between the native artists versus the worldwide artists, if you will. Let's take another break. When we come back, we'll take another trip. This one will end up in China and explain what's happening in China right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, y'all.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and on the web at dwowmusicradio.com. We're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were taking our 2 of 3 destinations today, which was Canada, UK, and now we're headed off to China. So let's explain a little bit about the biggest company in China. The biggest company in China is valued at $250 billion. This is a company named Tencent Holdings. Tencent Holdings not only is the largest company in China, it also happens to own the third largest music subscription business in the world.
Wow.
To give you a little
perspective. Holding.
Yeah, then the company's called Tencent Holdings. Okay? They're Chinese. This music subscription business is so big that it represents 77% of the market share. That's huge. Give you a little more perspective. We're talking about people. In China, we're talking about 1.3 billion people. In the US, we're talking about 325 million. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, subscriber base potential-wise. So, why are we talking about China? Well, it's really, really hard if you're a streaming service that is not owned by Tencent Holdings to make any sort of headway in the marketplace in China. Why? Because when a company like Tencent Holdings has a market share of 77%, do you think they're going to make it easy for you, new streaming company, to make some sort of dent? Your competition. What do you think they'll do with you, this company that's valued at $250 billion? Well, right now, Spotify and Apple Music are about to find out what happens when they come against one of the biggest companies in the world in the name of Tencent Holdings. Why are we talking about this? Because Spotify and Apple Music, knowing that there's a big wide world out there, is looking to make inroads in other countries where there's a big subscriber and ad revenue potential to be explored. In this case, China. China is like the new frontier in terms of digital music because you have a large amount of people that are at these places, these faraway countries, and they all have expendable income. They're spending on a month-to-month basis, and we're talking billions versus millions. First of all, I am excited about the idea of potentially having this opportunity where maybe some of our music could end up in a Chinese market in some way. On the other side, I remember some of our other reports that explained that China was one of the biggest bootleggers in the world for counterfeit music. I'm laughing already because you're giving me a look like it's like almost you can't believe it, but it's
No.
very funny.
I believe it, but when we're talking about China, now let's be clear. Trump is getting ready to mess that all up anyway, so.
The point of this segment is that
trade.
Yes, it's exactly what's going to happen now. In the U.S., we have a new administration where the trade policies are changing right now, and companies like Tencent Holdings, countries like China are going to be more in the spotlight, especially from media like music business, film companies, other artistic endeavors, because just like China, there are lots of companies that are going to be looking for potential for money around the globe, especially when you consider how many folks are out in like companies like China, countries like China and such. Anyway, that's all the time we have today, but I want to make you understand though, why are we talking about these countries? Because all of this affects you. If you're signing up for a service, it would behoove you to understand if these services are signing up side deals with companies.
Exactly. That you should be getting money from.
Right. You should be getting money from. You should at the very least understand where the money ends up, what the paper trail is. Transparency. That's what we're talking about here today. And also to be aware that the world is changing all the time, very rapidly. When it comes to music consumption, the idea of streaming taking over the world. I mean, these figures are like streaming income is bringing in double than these other mediums. But the argument in a lot of the reports are, what happens over time? It can't just double forever. So what happens when streaming starts to plateau in favor of something else?
No, not even a question about plateau. The bottom line is show me the money. Show me the money.
And actually show me where it is.
Yes, everything's in a cyber world.
Yes, show me where it is.
So with it being in a cyber world, as you can say, anything can happen by a click and strike of a key.
That's it. Very quickly. You're right. Thanks for tuning in today at the Freedom Radio Hour. Definitely check out freedomradiohour.com and post a comment under everything we're posting because we'd love to hear from you.
We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely check out and download our free app. Search out Freedom Radio Hour on both Google Play and the iTunes App Store. You can get that for free. Of course, check out EddieNicholas.com, DJAdamCruz.com for more of this fantastic music. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. I'll see you next time.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. Freedom Radio Hour, y'all. There I go, there I go, there I go.
See you next time. Peace.
Funny little thing happens when you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me. Shoot doo 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 doo. Peace.